You know, every family has its own unique vibe, right? A kind of shared personality. Some are super chaotic and loud, others are more quiet and structured. But what if I told you that dynamic wasn't just something you could feel, but something you could actually see in the brain? Well, that's exactly what one new study set out to discover.
So that brings us to the big question. Can you literally see a family's bond in their brains? I mean, can we pop open a brain scanner and find a biological signature for that connection? It sounds a little like science fiction, doesn't it? But the answer, as you're about to see, is surprisingly real.
All right, so how on earth do you even begin to measure something as complex as a family's personality? Well, researchers are starting to move beyond just watching how people behave. They're actually digging into the neurobiology of it all, what they call family functioning.
The goal here was pretty simple, but also really profound. They wanted to see if what parents said about their family on a questionnaire, how they described their dynamic, would actually match up with what was happening in their brains when they worked on a task with their child. It's like a reality check. Does what we think we are line up with what our brains are doing? To pull this off, they needed two key tools. First, a really detailed questionnaire to get a read on the family's self-reported personality. And second, some pretty cool technology that can measure two people's brain activity at the exact same time. So let's start with the questionnaire. The first big thing they measured was family cohesion. And yeah, it's pretty much exactly what it sounds like. It's the emotional glue of a family. How close do they feel? Are they supportive? It's that sense of we-ness. The second piece of the puzzle, and this turns out to be the hero of our story, is family flexibility. This is all about how well a family can adapt when things get tough. Can they change the rules if they need to? Can they shift who's in charge to deal with a problem? Really, it's their ability to bend without breaking.
So the theory behind all this is that the best functioning families are balanced. They've found a sweet spot. They're not too extreme one way or the other. As you can see here, they're adaptive and centered. On the flip side, unbalanced families can get stuck. They might be way too rigid or totally chaotic, making it really hard to cope when life throws a curveball.
Okay, now for the cool biology part. The researchers measured something called neural synchrony, using a technique called FNIRS hyperscanning. The easiest way to think about it is like two brains literally dancing to the same beat. When two people are really locked in and working together, their brain activity in certain areas can actually sync up and fire in the same rhythm.
So they had their questionnaire answers and their brain scanning tech. Now it was time for the main event. They designed this really clever experiment to see how that brain sync between parents and their kids would change under different kinds of pressure.
The study had 105 parent-child pairs, and the kids were all around 5 years old, which is a super important time for bonding and development. Both the parent and the child wore these little FNIRS caps on their heads, measuring their brain activity together in real time. And the experiment had three very distinct parts. First, a nice, calm baseline phase where they just did a fun little art project. Then they cranked up the heat with a stress phase. Here, they had to solve puzzles that were designed to be really hard, all while a timer was ticking down. And finally, a recovery phase where they could just relax and play with some cool toys. The whole point was to watch how their brain sync would shift as they went from calm to stressed and back to calm again.
Okay, so what did they find? This is where things get really, really interesting, because the results pointed to a surprising connection that honestly nobody was quite expecting.
First off, one finding was true for absolutely everyone. Brain-to-brain synchrony went through the roof during that stressful puzzle task. And that makes total sense, right? When you're trying to solve a tough problem together, you really have to get on the same wavelength. Your brains have to work together more closely. But here is the major twist. The researchers thought for sure that cohesion, that family closeness, would be the thing that predicted how the brain synchrony changed. But it wasn't. As you can see in this quote from the paper, it was actually balanced flexibility that was the key ingredient. Now this chart really tells the whole story. Look at the bars. For the families who rated themselves as low in flexibility, their brain sync didn't change all that much between being stressed out and then recovering. But then look over at the highly flexible families, you see this huge drop. It's like their brain synced up super tight when they needed to solve the problem, and then they were able to flexibly unsync and relax when the pressure was off. So here it is, the big aha moment. The connection was real. The families who said they were more flexible on that questionnaire, well, their brains were literally more flexible. Their self-perception had a visible, measurable biological signature.
And honestly, this is a huge deal. It's what scientists call a proof of principle study. It proves that this connection exists, and it just opens up this whole new world for understanding what makes some families so resilient.
So what's the big takeaway here? Well, we now know that how a family functions isn't just some vague, abstract concept. It has a real, measurable signature in our biology. And, crucially, it's a family's flexibility, their ability to adapt to stress, that really seems to stand out. That knack for syncing up to face a challenge and then flexibly letting go, that seems to be a core ingredient of a truly resilient family.
This kind of research is just incredible. It proves that the bonds within a family are so much deeper than what we can see on the surface. And it leaves you with this fascinating question, doesn't it? What other invisible biological connections are at play shaping how our families love, grow, and navigate the world together?